Hi developers, and welcome to our first community video. This is Martin from Tatum, and joining me today is David Nandwa, CTO and founder of HoneyCoin, which is a digital wallet startup based in Kenya. Hi Dave, and welcome.
Hi, really great to be here. Excited to do the interview and just have a good time chatting about HoneyCoin and other things as well.
Dave, just to get a bit of introduction, you're still a pretty young developer, full stack, but despite your age, you've already accomplished quite some impressive things across Africa. So could you tell us a bit about your background, please?
I started early and it was mostly just for fun, and I really started getting serious with it about 14, 15, where I started now building out like full-fledged applications, whether it was a simple web app or like an e-commerce solution, and pitching it to businesses that it might apply to or that they might find it useful. And that's when I really started to see that this is a skill that I can commercialize. And that's when I really started to get engaged with essentially building out market viable solutions. So not just like your fun side project, but something that could actually be helpful to businesses or even to like individuals. And that's how really I started to see that aside from being really fun, programming can also be like an avenue to create solutions that can impact a lot of lives or provide value. And so 14 or 15, that's when I started getting serious with it and working with a lot of companies. And I built out a lot of products in that period, like I would say 14 to 17 around there. And then some were acquired, some ended up being something that the company uses internally. And that was really exciting for me because so even if I was to think about 8-9 years back, there was still no, and even right now, there's still no infrastructure in place to really say how we can onboard really young devs and help them to utilize their skills to provide value to companies. And so for me, that was like a huge learning curve. A lot of mistakes were made along the way and that kind of thing. But I think what was really impactful for me, or rather what was instrumental in that whole process, was just the iterating of like, you fail and then you try again and you build, and some things work, some things don't. And then since that time, I've ended up working with a bunch of really successful companies, some companies that I've went on to do like, about 100, 200,000, even up to $1 million in revenue, which is exciting for me because it's when you build something and it actually provides value to the point where it's very valuable to consumers or to users. It's definitely something I'm starting to do. In terms of my recent background, a lot of it has just been solely in the fintech space and the crypto space, and really working on solutions or working on products, whether big or small, to help, I'd say, provide impact in a space that's really still largely underserved and very infantile if you think about the global scale of where fintech will be in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah. But yeah, I've talked for quite a while, but in a nutshell, it's not really a nutshell, but yeah, in a nutshell, that's pretty much me.
That's cool. Yeah, Flutterwave, obviously that's a big name even outside Africa. And, and I like how you mentioned, kind of merging doing some development, but also seeing the impact that it actually has. Yeah. I think, especially in your situation, the projects you got involved in even before that, there was the Elsa, which is about helping.
Oh yeah. So definitely, yeah. So a lot of the projects, if I was to go back, like a lot of the projects I even got into that was serious about that, even included partnering with maybe some nonprofit organization or government organization to some extent, where I'd say I was very specific in the things that I engaged in at a serious level, if it was not just a side project. Because for me, what's really big for me is not just building something that's nice or that looks nice or that functions well, but really impact at scale is a huge, I'd say it's a huge, in order to describe, like, for me, it's a huge value prop, like, that I look for when I want to engage in a project.
That's really well said. And especially in places like Africa, where you can have this really new technology disrupt and potentially really help and change many, many lives of many people.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if you think about even fintech at this time, like why a lot of investors are interested in fintech, a lot of consumers are just drawn to fintech, is because I think right now we're going to see a lot more products that are not in the fintech space, But fintech is essentially like the base layer that will provide the avenue for all of these other products. Because at the base of it, or rather at the core of it, businesses that are fundable or businesses that are profitable need money, and they need a way to acquire money. They need a way to send money. So if you think about a SaaS business, if you think about agri-tech, if you think about biotech, all of these businesses will deal with money. And if they want to deal with it at scale, then we definitely need a really good fintech base. And I think that's where companies like Flutterwave, Paystack, and even companies in the blockchain space that are doing. So we're essentially, I think what we're doing by operating in this fintech space and all working collaboratively is to essentially just build a base to allow a lot more businesses to be able to be built on top of this base, which is essentially a core. The core thing is essentially just the money that needs to move, that needs to be acquired. And if you even think about investors, like a lot of them, when they see a business and they hear the pitch, they normally just go down to asking, okay, are you profitable, or like, what are your numbers looking like? If there's no way to acquire that revenue, then there's definitely no way to build impactful businesses as well. So it's kind of like a thing where the fintech aspect of it is what's really going to power a lot of these other businesses. And I think that's also really exciting.
Yeah, and it's exciting to be part of it. And, you know, staying in that fintech space, and your current venture, HoneyCoin, which is also in the area. How do you see HoneyCoin, and what really is HoneyCoin? Just for the listeners, could you explain a bit?
It's a great question. Yes, a great question. So if I was to describe it really simply, I would say like HoneyCoin is essentially like, it's a cross between Cash App and Gumroad, but like with a really Africa-centric focus. And why I describe it like that is because we're particularly focused on two main things, which is helping individuals monetize their audience. So whether you are a writer, whether you are an artist, whether you do music, whether you take photos, whether you're into photography. So just anyone in the creative space, we help those individuals monetize their audience by providing payment channels that, first of all, are specific to this market. So if you think about mobile money, if you think about leveraging blockchain or ERC20 or Ethereum, and all of these other channels that still are not tapped into, that don't allow creators as a whole to really tap into the African market. And then one of our second really main focuses is remittance. So, and initially when I started work on HoneyCoin, the main value prop was really connecting all African countries and making Africa feel like one really big country from a payments perspective. And so that's allowing users to send and receive money instantly wherever they are. And we've definitely experienced early signs of this success in that space. And I think we are already starting to see success on the monetization front, and we're looking to just double down on that. But in a nutshell, yeah, our main goal is just, and we're particularly focused on I would say younger demographics. So think 18 to 35, Gen Z and millennials. And this, I think, especially because Africa has the fastest growing youth population in the world, I think it's a very bad thing to be able to say that we are largely underserving the population that's the fastest growing. Because if you think about it from an impact perspective, if we as a generation, which is who are young, are growing at the fastest rate and are being largely underserved, then by the time we grow, the amount of impact we'll be able to have has already been limited, because we're not being provided with the financial infrastructure to really provide value or create opportunities or create businesses that also now provide value to a bunch of users. So I'd say our main goal is really focusing on that particular demographic and just helping them, build wealth, manage their money, and really tap into the continent as a whole. One of our main focuses is in really making it very easy for someone to onboard and start using the platform with little to no, I would say, reason to reach out or to ask questions. So the interface and the user experience is built to accommodate every single person, whether you are techie or non-techie. And I think that's also a huge, I'd say one of our biggest value props is in being so easy to use that literally anyone can use the platform and not feel like it's complicated or it's like very, I'd say, oriented to techies or young people and that kind of thing.
So David, we got mostly developers watching, and could we dive deeper into the more technical aspects of your project? Because I remember maybe a month ago when we first talked, your app was in beta version. You already had some code written. At the same time, you're facing quite some challenges, and there's been a journey. So if you could help us understand that.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about the technical stack a bit. So front-end wise, we just have a standard front-end for the application. So it's a Kotlin code base for the Android application, and then standard Swift for the iOS application. And then the backend is just an Express and Node backend. And we use Firebase as well as a combination of another NoSQL backend to manage all of the user data. And one company that's really helped, because we're in the fintech space and because we deal a lot with private keys and like really sensitive information, is VGS. So Very Good Security is actually they were one of our first partners last year when we were building. So I connected with one of the people on the team named Grant, and I started explaining the product, and he really liked it. So he also said, we should definitely work on something, or we can definitely actually be able to provide value to you by helping you just off-ramp all of these private, I would say sensitive data that would be more or less, like it's easy to compromise it. So regardless of whether our databases have really strong rules and like a really strong authentication in place, I feel like it's always a good idea, especially being in the fintech space. It's definitely better to be like really safe, or rather I'd say security oriented, and even do over and above what you would need to do. Because I mean, in this space, we're dealing with money. So you can't essentially tell a user that we apologize for an inconvenience if that inconvenience is their fund. So VGS was definitely a key partner. And also, so just to talk a bit about even the app. So the backend is the most important aspect. And I would say at the core, we are a monetization and remittance application. But really, if the backend was to be a front-facing API, we would be more like a fintech platform, because how the platform is different to, I'd say, a lot of other competitors is we spend a lot of time working on how to connect a lot of external integrations into one unified API. And one thing that is on our roadmap is definitely providing now a front-facing API so developers can plug into it and then build their own solutions on top of HoneyCoin, like whether that's, building a sort of helping a specific individual build a recurring membership payment plan, or whether that's just accepting payments in different countries, because I feel like we've really nailed that aspect of the product. But also just to talk a bit about the on the website. So the web is actually Angular, and I chose Angular because I've really been using Angular for a long time, but I do use React and Vue, but like Angular is definitely my strongest point. So that's what we're using for the actual website, so the web application. And then it just basically pulls the same backend. So it utilizes the Node.js backend, which I talked about a bit, and the Firebase and NoSQL backend that we also do have. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's pretty much the overall tech stack. We do use some external tools like Twilio to send like the one-time passwords and any SMSs. And then of course on the backend for our blockchain layer, we were doing it in-house initially, but yeah, I actually remember talking with Sam and the team a while back and just explaining how we wouldn't be able to scale if we try to build everything in-house. So on the back end, one fundamental aspect for our crypto offering is definitely our Tatum integration as well.
Yeah, thanks for explaining and showing and help us understand. Was there one more question regarding the tech development? Mm-hmm. Was there like really some moment kind of when you started the journey, something really that you realized you should have done better, or something you would probably do differently now, or something you really got right the first time? Mm-hmm. Was there any moment like that?
I didn't build out an admin dashboard for managing users, so I was relying solely on our backend and the Firebase dashboard. I did put together a really rough, I'd say, initial dashboard, which I've of course improved on and built on now. But I'd say that was a huge blocker for me, because even if like I'm really technical, I realized the importance of having like, I'd say a really quick way to view just how the application is doing and all. That's outside of the analytics, that's outside of the technical data, which is not like, you're not thinking about dealing with objects, but just a really neat way to display the data and to be able to track the application. I think that's what I didn't invest time in early on, because I thought, so because I'm technical, I can always, if I want to debug information, I can always just look through the database. If I want to just view a user, I can always look through the database. And so initially, I thought that would have been okay for me, but I realized that an admin dashboard early on would have been I'd say a more robust one. So it was very simple. And I think what I would have done differently initially would be building like a much more robust admin dashboard that, displays all of the information, and it is very easy to be able to analyze. Basically, when a user has a problem, we can essentially just jump in on the dashboard, log in, and all of the information is displayed automatically. So I really focused a lot on the user experience, on the front-facing user. So on the app, on the Android and iOS apps, on the web app, I focused a lot on that user experience and didn't care too much about the admin experience. But looking back, I would have definitely done that differently and focused a lot more on. Another thing that I'd have definitely done differently, initially, I didn't have any capital to put into the business, before any investors, before any of that. So it was essentially like, if the only resource I have to spend is time, then I'm going to put in my time. But I realize now that when we were starting to generate revenue, it would have been smarter to at least hire like one developer who would be able to handle the load. Because there was a time that I was, almost overwhelmed, but just, trying to drag through it just because I'm the one who committed to it and I just had to follow through. But yeah, that was a lot of work.
Luckily, it worked well and you're where you are. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we're definitely growing like at a steady clip right now. And I just actually tweeted about this today morning. So between yesterday and today, we're actually doing about like 500 transactions a day, which is huge because that's been like, it's normally about 10 to 20, 30, 40, but like this week we've experienced like a huge growth curve. And I think this is, so just from analyzing the data, like one of the large contributors is we've started rolling out our crypto offering now with Tatum. So migrating from our initial in-house blockchain offering to now help with at least off-ramping that and like all of the load onto Tatum. And users really, I guess also because there's a lot of buzz in the crypto space right now. So users are also like, okay, listen, I wanna activate my wallet, I wanna buy some Bitcoin and just, join this whole, there's a huge, I feel like right now, Bitcoin and like cryptocurrencies are having like a lot of media attention and all of that. And that's also contributed to a bit of the success of the app. But I also think that the model of the application has also helped the growth, because being a monetization and P2P remittance application, the only people who will come on are people who are going to send money to people they know. And the only way they're going to do that is if the other person has the app. So you find this phenomenon, well, it's not really a phenomenon, but it's a really neat, I'd say, occurrence whereby one user essentially comes on with 5 users. So like our user acquisition costs are much lower because we work on acquiring one person and they end up bringing like 10 to 20 people if they're an individual. If they are a creator, why I'm really excited about the creator aspect. And it's not going to be easy acquiring these really big creators, but I know that once you acquire like one creator who maybe has an audience of 10,000 people, they essentially come with their whole audience from a customer standpoint. So I think our growth curve is definitely going to even look more steeper as we start to like onboard and we get into our public launch and really start to double down on marketing and talking about the product. So yeah, really exciting. So one of the reasons I really like Tatum, apart from the fact that the team is just a lot very friendly. I don't do this with a lot of my partners, so it's definitely a differentiator. But one of the other reasons I really love about Tatum is the documentation is completely A1. So like, start to finish, everything is laid out for you. And like, there are also examples for different, whether you're using Node or whether you're using Python, so different languages. And also the Postman collection really helps. So the simplicity of the docs really helped in me being able to build it out quickly without a lot of friction. So, I don't know if you've experienced this before, but like, there are a lot of great platforms or APIs that are good technically, but their documentation is so bad that they don't have a large developer community, because a developer doesn't even know how to use the API because you've documented it so badly. And I think why, if we're to look even at a company that's really excelled in this as well, like why Stripe right now is like the fintech standard for payments APIs, is because if you go on their documentation, even someone who doesn't know how to code might look at it and be able to say, oh, okay, so that's how it works. And you essentially just connect that and that. And I think nailing that is definitely a huge contributor to the growth of our platform. And you guys have really nailed that as well. So congrats on that.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dave. If there was just one question that you were supposed to give a fellow developer who might want to jump into a similar project, you know, in a fintech space, what would it be?
It's difficult to narrow it down to just one. Can I do like two at least?
Yeah.
So yeah, the two things I would say, especially if you want to get into the fintech space, is don't ignore regulators and compliance. That can come and bite you in the ass really hard. And that was the case for us in October. Yeah, around October when we launched, there was a lot of excitement around the product. So we were initially doing about we started really polite, so like $100, $200 a day. And there was a day that it spiked. So it went to about 9,000. We started doing about $5,000 a day. And then now like compliance teams and regulators started saying, okay, listen, who is this platform that just came out of nowhere and they're doing these large volumes? And I hadn't even I knew compliance would come, but I thought we would grow slowly so I can tackle that later on. But one piece of advice I would give is don't ignore regulators, don't ignore compliance, get involved with your local regulators and compliance teams if there are any in place. Just to understand, there are also a lot of really great incubators, and governments are now starting to at least, put steps in place to say that we can have an incubation program for a startup if you're in the fintech space where we'll just monitor you and be able to keep tabs on you. That should not be ignored, because I feel like you wouldn't want the blocker for your platform to be that one day, like a regulator just came to your place and said, listen, you guys need to shut down, you've been operating illegally. And that would be a huge, a bummer, because you built out this platform, you spend the time, and not talking to the regulators early on might just be the thing that just kills your platform. And the other piece of advice I'd give is, I'd say just start. If you have a bit of knowledge, you've talked to people who are experienced in the space and you know what you want to build, but more importantly, you've also talked to users and done a lot of user research, just go ahead and start. I think when I do talk about the product, or when people who reach out to me find me from Pioneer, or they find me on LinkedIn and through Twitter, most of them are shocked about the fact that I'm 19 and then I built out the platform and how it's doing right now. But I think if age is a shocker right now, I don't even know how it will look 5 to 10 years, because I think we're going to see a lot more young founders, but a lot more people who are really brilliant and just decided to go ahead and start. A lot of people are waiting for the right time and, to have the right knowledge, but I think that's also really limiting them for even learning as they go, which I think is definitely a brilliant way to go. So those would be my two pieces of just my two pieces of advice that I'm essentially speaking to myself.
Thanks for summing it up and giving the recommendation. And for the last question, David, in just one word, what is Tatum for you?
Seamless. Seamless is the word. And then maybe just to touch on the word, why I say seamless is because out of all the blockchain APIs I used, and I did do a lot of research, Tatum was by far the easiest and fastest to integrate. And I think seamless is a really great trait to have, because if you think about APIs, your customer base is developers. And if they don't like you, if a ton of developers just say, we don't like that API, you're done, your business is done. But with Tatum, that seamlessness is, I think, the reason why every single day, because I'm part of the community, I just see devs coming onto the community, coming onto the Telegram channel or on Reddit. And I think that's because it's so seamless. And I think that's, it's totally a great value prop to have. And yeah, so my word would be seamless.
Well, Dave, thanks a lot. I could talk to you for ages. There's been lots of value and inspiration thrown out. Really, thanks for your time. And I wish all the success to you and to HoneyCoin.
Thanks so much, Martin. I appreciate even, having just the talk, having like a very, I would say, casual conversation. And then for me, on my side, I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
I did a lot. Awesome.
Thanks so much.
And for all of you watching this video, leave any question you might have in the comment section below. Subscribe to our channel, join our Reddit community. The link will be in the description. Stay in touch and just happy coding.